Hello, Mithril here once again, getting back to Mag Mammal 2, and it's time for the judge commentary on the last two stages we played, starting with 56th place, Crashman's Neon Man. Snowrun Pyro. This level pulls off its gimmick incredibly well, and I absolutely despise it for that. I cannot handle the weirdo holograms. They literally destroy my brain. Call me dumb, but once they activate, I just completely stop functioning and get horribly disoriented and just run into pits and have not a fun time at all. The level sets out to mess with your head with illusions, and it did it so well that my brain melted and I just did not care to even try to beat this level legit. I was so tired of dying constantly by the end of it that I just cheated the rooms with Hornet Chaser. Yeah, wouldn't know anything about that. The boss is pretty bad too. The bouncing bullets from the Apache Joes are obnoxious, hard to kill, and deal a ton of damage, and Neon Man himself also will eat your health alive if you so much as graze him. I appreciate that you were able to pull off this gimmick really well. It's probably like the best illusion-type gimmick in Mega Man I've seen. The issue is that it does its job far too well and horribly broke my brain, and just led me to constantly dying over and over because I slightly misjudged where platforms would be. Yeah, feel you on that one. Joopy Hornet. The outside sections looked really cool, but the inside sections were just the same backgrounds over and over and didn't look good. I didn't really like the holographic sections either, and it almost feels like some parts of the stage were designed for the player to destroy the holograms with Hornet Chaser, because getting through certain sections is really hard if you don't. That's not a good thing to do to the player. The boss was also way too hectic, and that Copter Joe just sends it over the edge. Overall, this level had a lot of potential, but bad execution. Angel. Well, the concept for this is certainly interesting. However, it's one of those concepts which encourages the player to get rid of it altogether during their playthrough. Doing a Buster-only run of this stage can easily get very tedious, as the player has to wait often complete cycles of the background in order to not put themselves at risk of falling off. Coupled with the added enemies later in the stage, using Hornet Chaser to just get rid of the entire driving point of the level is a much safer option, which also will make the level a lot more fun to play. The boss fight is not much better, unfortunately, with the background and Apache Joes distracting from the actual fight, and the projectiles blending in with the slowly moving background. I didn't have a lot of fun with this level, and I think that while its concept is creative, it needs a lot of adjustments in order to be even remotely usable in a fun environment. Gariri. I don't see how the weird screen distorting effect was any good at all. If you fail to quickly kill the enemy that causes it, the view's already screwed itself, and not dying becomes a case of trial and error. Not to mention that the level design doesn't suit such mechanic to begin with. Granted, there were some cool ideas, but it's just an average level. It's not very fun, looks bad, and is executed awfully. Ace Spark. Nice beam. Okay, on a serious note, I think the weakest aspect of your stage is the graphics, as a lot of the stuff was way off style, particularly the original enemies and the Master. You know what, I could live with lackluster graphics, and I will give you props for making sure things match the color palette of your level. As for your stage, your primary gimmick was really cool. I loved the idea behind it. Sure, it occasionally required you to memorize, but checkpoints were very well placed, so that helped a big deal to limit the frustration. Where things get kinda wonky is some of the enemy layouts on the screens with your gimmick. Many are overcrowded. Fewer enemies on these screens would have helped this stage a big deal better. The Great Propeller enemy is the biggest offender. He has too much health and nearly always placed in locations where he's fine on his own, but mixed with other enemies was painful. Still, I felt this level was enjoyable all told, if a bit too hard for its own good. Your Robot Master was really fun to fight, and a great cap to your end of level. He was difficult, but very doable and very satisfying to actually take down Buster only. Next to your gimmick idea, I think your execution of this guy is the highlight of your stage. Overall, I kind of feel like I said what I needed to say here. The stage is an interesting idea, but yeah, the gimmick, it's very easily cheesed, and that's kind of a good thing, though not really good for the stage execution itself. Trying to do this stage Buster only, that's a terrifying thought, because as you can see, I kept misjudging where platforms ended. I kept thinking that I was a lot closer to the end than I really was. It's an interesting idea, but yeah, kind of a painful one. Still, impressive that you were able to pull it off, I have to say. So, back on the train. And we have 55th, the Megafan 19XDX, Jungle Base. Snowrun Pyro. Weirdly designed level. Most of the obstacles you can basically just blow through with a charge shot or effortlessly slide past. The level also doesn't play terribly well because the majority of enemies that take more than a charge shot are Sniper Joes. The enemies seem less placed to be a threat and more placed to be in your way. It's just a kind of bleh level. There's There's effort, and the theme is okay. Music is pretty great. The design just isn't there. Chippy Hornet. That was a pretty boring level. It was mostly just running to the right, charging your buster, and shooting enemies without giving it a second thought. There were some rooms where you didn't even have to stop moving. I kinda liked the use of the different tile sets, but there were a few rooms toward the end that were a bit hard on the eyes. Try to make it more clear what's a background and what isn't. Angel. A pretty nice rompy jungle level. It presents its ideas in an organized fashion and expands on some of them throughout the level. Sadly, it often forgets about some of the assets it introduced, making the level feel more segmented than coherent in parts. It also likes to throw in a little too many enemies at one occasionally with airborne enemies, serving as a projectile dispenser that can't easily be taken care of unless you fire hornets or throw swords at them, a method not otherwise encouraged in the level. As far as the mutation of setups is concerned, the level leans toward repetition more so than mutation, with many consecutive instances of the same premise being very similar to each other. Nonetheless, this is a fun level to play through that presents itself as fair towards the player, and just needs that polish in order to be much more satisfying to play. Gariri. There's not a lot to say about this level. Nothing in it feels either awful or awesome. The level design is actually fairly decent, but it's not something that is particularly amazing. Admittedly, this stage does look a bit too similar to Napalm Man's stage, but it still has a few pretty decent ideas. Other than that, there's just not much I can say. It's decent, but nothing too spectacular here. And Aespark. I get it, going for the Contra theme, fair enough, but Mega Man is not a run-and-gun game. It's a full-on platformer. You really can't just get away with plonking enemies willy-nilly and expect it to be fun. Even Contra on the NES bothered with stage gimmicks to prevent stagnation. This did nothing. There's nothing horrible about this, but why not explore the dev kit a little? There is a metric ton of gimmicks in there, more than just enemies. Please use them. To give you some credit, even on overcrowded screens, it never felt unmanageable, and the look of the stage was absolutely fine, if generic. You're decent at getting tile sets to work together, and the layout wasn't bad, but boy was this stage horrifically dull. At least some of the other enemies-only stages managed to have some originality behind them. Also, boss corridor, no boss or climax. If you weren't going to use any other Mega Man tropes, why use this one? So with that, that's where we're going to call it for now. Well, actually, okay, my thoughts on that stage, I kind of forgot to go into that. I kind of agree. The stage did just feel kind of there. It was an okay rompy stage, but it really didn't do anything too spectacular. It was kind of its own thing. Like they said, they kind of tried to make a run-and-gun stage in a Mega Man, which it works, but isn't really that memorable overall compared to stages that use like a lot of gimmicks and things like that. Gimmicks don't necessarily make or break a stage, but you kind of have to have a little bit more than this, I feel like. At the end of the day, it wasn't a bad stage to play through. It just probably in the end won't really be all that memorable. But yeah, with that, that's where we're going to call it for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the series so far, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.